Modern gaming has it become a chore? Is it just something that gives you a lot of tasks that you have to do on a honey-do list and never actually get to do the fun, exciting stuff? Probably not. But there does seem like there's a lot of scut work nowadays.
Modern gaming has slowly begun to
Power Wash Simulator.
And before you say something like,
"You're just growing out of the hobby. You're just getting older,"
I don't feel this way towards older games that
personal
I am now
attacks
playing for the first time, or several indie titles. No, this feeling mainly comes from the mainstream AAA games released over the last few years. And I know I'm not alone in this, as it's one of the most common topics brought up in forums and discussions in the broader gaming community.
Gamers.
You know, it isn't just one or two niche communities.
At least we're consistent.
Many different types of gamers are sharing a similar sentiment. And game development technology has only gotten better and better, and games have only become more and more ambitious. So from an objective standpoint, gaming should be better now than ever before. So why do so many gamers share this sentiment? Again, there's always the,
"You're outgrowing gaming. You're nostalgic for the past. You're just burnt out."
And while these are applicable
could
to
all
some,
be accurate.
I don't think it fully represents the full picture, and the problem goes far deeper than these very surface level explanations. So I want to look at that first point. Old games don't feel like a chore.
I mean, that goes to the whole like crux of like the simple, quick arguments dismiss the actual debate. And the actual debate is probably something that's a lot healthier for the gaming community as a whole, as opposed to dismissing people who have a negative view. Debating is good, and it can bring to light some solutions and some like overarching problems, right? So let's have the debate.
But new ones do. Why? What's the difference between new and old game design that separate them from one another? Well, there's quite a lot actually, and we're not going to be able to cover all of them in this video.
Grindy games have always existed. That's accurate.
Old games rarely wasted your time. They got you right into the action, right into the adventure. And other than Metal Gear Solid, most games didn't have hours of cutscenes, or tracking across open expanses of nothingness to get to the next point of interest. No farming for materials or grinding XP.
When, like,
no
what
climbing
is
hundreds of towers to reveal the...
What is the start point for that? Because Assassin's Creed 2 and Assassin's Creed 2 and 3, you still had to go through a lot of territory to get all your viewpoints so that you could get the map and see everything. Like, these mechanics are just more exposed because maps are so much bigger. GTA, Vice City, there was still like you were locked to certain territories and like, yeah, you could get into the action easily, but I spent a lot of time driving around in Vice City, getting from point to point. Spent hours grinding in Final Fantasy on PS1 in the late 90s. That's like, these grinds have always existed. It's just, it wasn't as obvious because maps were smaller. And like the scale of the game was smaller, and maybe gaming should go back to that. But AC Mirage has said that they are going back to like a single city, smaller map with higher populations. So like that is a return to that same system of earlier Assassin's Creeds. And are people still going to say that it's still too grindy? Probably.
Dark part of a map. And most importantly, nobody said things like,
"You gotta spend at least 20 hours in this game before it gets good."
You know, you could tell right away if a game was going to hook you. Let's take New Vegas and Starfield as examples. We're going to compare the first 60 minutes of New Vegas versus the first 60 minutes of Starfield. In Fallout New Vegas, you get a brief intro cinematic to set up the world of Fallout and the main plot that New Vegas would revolve around. You immediately wake up in a doctor's house. He helps you set up your character stats and character creator. You stumble outside and begin talking to a few folks in town. You learn the basics of combat and survival from one of the characters. You then involve yourself in a conflicting quest to either help the town against a bunch of escaped convicts, or help the convicts take over the town. And in the process of all that, you've learned about skill checks and branching quest design that will affect the game forever. And in the aftermath of whichever choice you choose, you now know almost everything you'll ever need to know for the rest of the game, and you've pretty much wrapped up your first hour of New Vegas right there. Obsidian then hands you the reins to just go play the game. Complete free.
But It's modern games, right? What about Elden Ring? Elden Ring spits you out of a cave and you're in front of a boss that you have no chance of fighting, gives you no direction, and the story you can completely ignore. I know so many people that have beaten Elden Ring and have no idea what the story is about. So, is that unique to older games? Or is it just how the game was developed in general? Some games take this longer character arch kind of approach to get you interested in it, which obviously feels hollow early on because your character is not developed yet. But like, there are still modern games that deliver that older experience. I think is a problem with Western RPGs. I mean, that could be fair, and it could be largely because games are chasing the hours within game and end user hours spent in game. And that's a terrible metric to chase. You should chase like your immersibility and end user enjoyment, because those will lead to the numbers that you want. So it's a miss. But again, like even in Starfield, where the main story takes a while to actually develop into something, you have a lot of side quests that are much shorter, that have a just as in-depth storyline and drive to like explore. So like, yeah, there's more going on and it's easier to miss the point or harder to get sucked in. But a lot of these mechanics are still kind of present in some games. They're just not as strong because the games are so overwhelmingly big that it's easy to miss, or like it's hard to get sucked into one specific thing because you have 20 things going on, which is a problem.
Freedom.
I will admit it's a problem.
In fact, you can wake up and run straight out of Good Springs immediately if you wanted to. Now let's take a look at Starfield's first hour. You're going to spend about 10 minutes slow walking while NPCs ramble to you. You pass out and wake up, create your character stats, slow walk for another 10 minutes with more exposition dumping, fight off a group of pirates for about 20 seconds, slow walk, and then exposition dump some more, interact with your loading screen, your ship, walk around a barren planet, shoot a couple more pirates, and then somehow, after that first hour, the game becomes even more restrictive and slow. And you will spend the next 3 hours doing nothing but slow walking and talking to NPCs to tutorialize you some more. Another 5 hours of fetch quests and radiant quests go by, and then by maybe hour 12 or 13, you have a similar level of freedom that you did after the first hour of New Vegas.
It's largely fair. Largely fair. They're trying to get you a good introduction, and there's a lot of hand holding into the quest line. Also, admittedly, like the number of mechanics in Starfield are huge. There's a lot of mechanics to go through in that game. Maybe we could do without the hand holding. Maybe just let people figure it out. But then I feel like the ultimate gamer would come back and say, like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Then game never makes any of these mechanics clear, and I didn't know that this thing existed for 15 or 20 hours into gameplay. Like, it's a double-edged sword, and I don't think any of them get a pass, or what, no matter what, someone's gonna complain kind of situation. So yeah, I don't know how to take it, but there are a lot more mechanics than there used to be in games, especially these big oversaturated games. And maybe, again, I think that is the problem with the industry, is they are oversaturating expansion to make everything bigger. It has more, you can do more, and like they add so much to it that it doesn't feel immersive because there's too much to learn to figure out how to actually like get through everything efficiently. And that's a problem with gaming. Scale it back down. Give us something very precise that we can cut through easily, and it'll be more immersive.
I mean, shit, by hour 12 in New Vegas, I'd be balls deep in uncovering a cannibalism conspiracy inside the Ultralux casino. Hell, even at hour 6, I'd already sent some ghouls into outer space. And games can often feel like a chore when they waste your time or they take too long to get going. And even when they do get going, it's not that good. And while not everyone feels like Starfield is a chore to play, I think it's more than safe to say that Starfield has been a very large disappointment for many for this very reason.
If you want to explore, you'll have.
I think Starfield is a massive disappointment. I've talked about this a lot. I think a lot of people are extremely disappointed with Starfield because they went in with expectations of a full space sim exploration game with an RPG story, when in reality it is not a space sim. It is a RPG with a space theme and some exploration. Now, that's obviously a marketing problem. Starfield was not clear to its consumer, and people developed these thoughts because of the way they marketed it, and that is their fault. But when people go in with expectations and it doesn't give them in this case, the genre of game they were hoping to play, it's going to be poorly received.
Have to go to your menu, zoom out of the planet, zoom out of the star system, navigate to a correctly leveled star system and fast travel. Then you watch a loading screen, a landing animation, and walk in a straight line for 3 to 5 minutes until you reach a point of interest. Unfortunately, none of these points of interest are interesting. At best, you'll find a copy-pasted pirate camp, and at worst, you'll find a planet trait, which is useless unless you're trying to fully scan a planet, or a cave with a few alien enemies and basically nothing in it.
But Starfield is just the most recent example of a game that wastes the player's time. We could discuss forever about the 20-hour feature films in the Sony PlayStation catalog.
So, Starfield wastes my time. Starfield wastes a lot of my time. And yet, people are mad that they don't have the ability to run around the planet uninterrupted, and they can't manually take off or fly to a planet. So not only does Starfield waste my time, but Starfield doesn't give me the ability to waste my time. Starfield won't let me do useless stuff that allows me to waste 20 minutes flying from planet to planet, or attempt to land on a gas giant, or just fly through the atmosphere of a gas giant. But it also wastes my time. I can't waste my time, but it's wasting my time. And this is that double-edged sword of the gaming community, right? Like, no matter what you say or what you do as a game dev, you're wrong. It wasn't done correctly. We want the ability to do all these useless things that you didn't give us, but what you did give us waste my time. I don't know. And this is just coming from watching a lot of like different arguments and why Starfield failed, whatever. But no matter what the argument is, people are always like countering each other.
Or the overbloated and tedious gameplay design of Ubisoft titles, or other generic game studios. Or we could talk about live service games that every few months give players 30 hours of busy work to grind out. It doesn't matter the example, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Modern games that love to waste your time, and only focus on getting you to spend as much time as possible inside their game.
Right,
Why?
And that metric...
Well, because if a game comes out...
I hate that they use that metric about how many hours someone spends in a game. It's not the metric they should be like building a game to get to, because then they put in extra things that you don't need to do or aren't fun or engaging. You make the game fun, engaging with an immersive world, and you will get gamers to stay in it for hours. Baldur's Gate 3 did it. Elden Ring did it. I mean, the new Zelda, people say it's kind of like a reskin of the one before it, so it's not as immersive, it's not as new and exciting, but people spend time in it still. Final Fantasy has been doing it for a long time. So it's not all modern gaming. It's a hit or miss situation like everything else.
And it has a 12-hour runtime. Gaming journalists and basement dwellers will publicly crucify the game for not being long enough. You know, I can see it now. BioShock released in today's timeline would have 10 hours of cutscenes added on top of it, and several NPCs would have radiant quests to complete, with the game totaling to over 40 hours. Because longer means better, am I right?
Wrong.
Absolutely.
That is absolutely
Wrong.
true.
Older games rarely would waste your time though. They knew that people had a limited time to play games, and that people are interested in playing other games. You know, I can play Assassin's Creed 2 over a weekend, maybe like an extra evening on a weekday too. And that's awesome. I didn't
'Cause the
waste
world was
2
smaller,
months grinding
but
it
you're
like I did with Valhalla. And because it doesn't take so long to get
Still has the grind of running from place to place to collect the eagle points. It just has it at a smaller scale.
through, I go back and play it at least once a year, because I know it won't eat up a whole lot of my time. But what
Fair.
about big, lengthy RPG games? I love them. And yes, they can take a while to play through. For instance, I loved my time with
That's
Elden
the
Ring.
point.
Put close to 100 hours in my first character. And Elden Ring seems like the perfect candidate for replayability, with the amount of builds and ways to approach the game. But the thought of replaying Elden Ring is a bit daunting. You know, I've played through Dark Souls dozens of times, and like Assassin's Creed 2, I play it at least once or twice a year because while it's possible to spend 80 hours in a single playthrough, my replays have been closer to 15 hours.
Okay.
RPGs that are more dense than expansive are ones that I always find myself going back to more often, or just games in general. Again, this doesn't mean large and expansive
what I've been
RPGs
saying.
are bad at all.
Dense and
You
immersive.
just need to respect my time. And I do think Elden Ring did do that. It's just not something I'm looking to replay quite yet.
Well,
Baldur's
It's a
Gate 3 is
punishing
a good
game.
example of a game that's huge. It's a behemoth of a game. But I think you can ask anyone, including myself, about their time with that game, and none of its playtime feels unnecessary or tedious or grindy. It's just a behemoth in a good way. Every hour is made up of worthwhile and what feels like necessary content. The real difference between a good lengthy game and
it is a
bad
good
one
game.
is playing a lot of hours because you're actually invested in the game versus hurrying through hours of tedium in order to get to the fun parts of the game. There are
Spend a
times in
lot of
modern
time
games,
walking
especially
around,
live
though.
services, that I would often be thinking about the literal chores I need to do in between the fun, doing all the live service style bullshit. Between hours of tedious quest design and more hours of inventory management, I was mostly relieved when I finally stopped playing the game for the night. Maybe 30% of my time in the game was actually having fun. Grinding for XP and materials to advance isn't a massive problem if the grind is reasonable, but we all know that in most games these days that just isn't the case.
No.
And again, the grind is always
Diablo the
extended
4
not for the
grind is
player's
kinda-
enjoyment, but to either pad out runtime
Takes a
in the game
lot.
or make you invest more in
But
order to
like
become
Diablo
addicted.
4 problem isn't the grind, it's the lack of continuation and development of what I'm doing later in the game. Diablo 4's problem is after I reach a certain point, round level 50, after I hit world tier 4, the what next doesn't exist. Everything after hitting world tier 4 in Diablo 4 is I'm just looking for better gear. I'm doing the exact same thing in the exact same way to get better gear. And there are so many stats in the game that it will take forever to find the perfect role that you want. And if you're looking for an uber unique to finish your build, you are screwed. It doesn't exist. I enjoy the game. I still play it occasionally, but at the end of the day, there's no end game. Season 2 has made a lot of promises about changing and diversifying the content, and we'll see what that holds. But Blizzard really needs to step it up in season 2 and season 3 to deliver people and get them to come back, because now they're fighting the uphill battle of people who got hyped, loved the game, and then realized the game fell off very quickly. They have to win those people back, and that is probably the hardest thing to do in gaming.
After a while, it became sort of stressful to play these games, like a genuine second job. I'm sure you've heard that several times.
Gotta do
Whereas
your
the games
dailies.
made with genuine intentions, I
You
always
do
find
your
myself
dailies.
truly invested into because I wanted to be, not because it required me to be. Games like these tend to consume my thoughts because of the world, the characters, the badass builds I'm experimenting with. I become obsessed with it. Not saying it's healthy for a game to consume your life in that way either, but at least you're genuinely enjoying the game because of the game, not because you're trying to check off a to-do list. Moments
Oh no, it's still not healthy. It's still really bad for me, but I'm happy about the bad lifestyle, so it's good. And I agree with him to a certain degree. Like, I'd rather have a game that I can't put down because I'm so invested or excited about than have a game that I'm just grinding through because it has stuff to grind through. Both of them are like, this is content and it's consuming me, but one of them I'm actually happy and excited about, right? That's good.
in games like, shit, I failed Siegmeyer Katarina, and I have to relay the bad news to his daughter. I wonder where she is. And then I spend several hours playing and adventuring, thinking about Siegmeyer's story and trying to find his daughter, while also working through other challenges along my journey. Moments like those are what make me want to keep playing and move forward.
Okay. Well,
Now, it would be wrong not to dive a bit into the reality of gaming burnout, which can also be a big reason some find gaming to be a chore. So,
I am going to say about his point about the Onion Knight and that story that drove him further is a very subjective metric. Everyone's interpretation or drive is different. So the do I like this game or is this game immersive is an insanely subjective thing because there is no accounting for taste in an objective way. Now, the mechanics, the size of the world, there are objective standards that can be applied, but how connected to a individual story you are is extremely subjective.
Let's talk about that. In today's gaming culture, there is a lot of social pressure surrounding the enjoyment of certain games, like you must like this game and praise it. Or if you enjoy this game, then you're an elitist. The online culture of video games can get pretty exhausting because
what a
everyone
snob.
has become extremely opinionated and upset with everyone else's preferences. So we see a lot of people shy away from playing certain games and trying to go along with public opinion and play what's popular or
That's
what's considered.
stupid. That is so stupid. Fuck public opinion. Fuck it all to hell. If it makes you happy, enjoy it. If it doesn't make you happy, leave people alone who it does make happy. It's not that hard. But the gaming community has a real problem with it. I'm going to attack you because you don't think like me. But also, like, they can fuck off. Just leave it alone. It doesn't matter. If my enjoyment of a game doesn't cause you any harm, why are you coming in here to tell me what trash game it is and I need to stop playing? I'm so sick of it. It gets old so quickly. I just laugh it off and ignore it when I'm streaming. But like, it's so stupid that someone would take time out of their day to tell me how bad something is. Like, just move on. Leave a bad review and move on. If it makes someone else happy, let them be happy. And if a game makes you happy, don't let the mass hordes of gamers convince you that you can't be happy playing it. It's just noise. It's all just noise.
Considered the thing to play in the broader gaming community, and I know we've all been guilty of this, myself included. I've played several games where I really just pushed through them despite not really enjoying the experience. You know, they just weren't for me, and they ended up being a chore to play through. And it's easy to get caught up in this, I must play this because everyone online is hyping it up idea.
Give it a try. If you don't
But
like
some
it, you don't
games
like
just
it.
aren't going to click with you, and that's okay. I've had to get used to finding the difference of wanting to play a game versus slogging my way through them for the sake of saying that I've done it. At this point, for myself at least, if I'm not feeling a game after the first few hours, I'm not going to force myself to see it through just to say I've done it. Gaming burnout really can set in when you start treating it like a checklist of games completed.
Accurate.
Now, I value my gaming time more than I used to. I don't feel as much of a need to be that gamer that's played everything. And I've been better off for it with that mindset shift. Gaming burnout can also just come from playing simply because of sunk cost fallacy, where you feel like you just can't quit the game. Usually a live service one because of the hours you've put into it. But sometimes you just need to hang up your hat and call it quits if you aren't enjoying a game that you once adored. Sometimes you are the problem.
Walk away.
All
It's
that
okay.
being said,
It's allowed.
I do think objectively, many games released nowadays Same as most movies and entertainment in general, while look flashy and have massive budgets, don't have those same things that hook a lot of players or moviegoers like they used to.
It's
If I really
100%
think of
fair.
a TV show that really wastes my time, it's The Witcher show. And that is not a problem with the source material that it's based on. The source material is fantastic. I highly recommend you read the books. But don't watch the fucking show. Talk about a piece of media that wastes your time. Or what about a game like Back 4 Blood? That game completely dropped off and kind of flopped, but the games that inspired it have lived on with healthy player counts and communities for over a decade. I think
Fair.
it's because a lot of these games aren't developed by gamers anymore. If you start looking at a lot of the development
I don't think
teams at
that's
most
true at all.
studios, you start to learn that a large number of the employees are just people who worked at some other random tech company prior to the game studio, and only took this job because they needed a job in their field. A lot of them are very clueless as to what makes a game so encapsulating. Now, I know I've already lost some of you at that.
Again, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think when it comes to the developers and the creative side, the industry is the same as it was before and before and before. So like creative and developmentally, all of those people are there. They just have a directive from the company to drive the game in a certain direction for monetization and sellability. So they're kind of locked into a corner and they have less freedom that they used to have. Is where I think gaming industry is for development and big companies like that.
That thought, but I think it's
Not that
pretty
those
evident
people
when
don't
looking at
exist
state
in
of
the
industry
company.
today. You know, when a game like Baldur's 3 comes out, made for gamers, by gamers that really care about the experience of the player, i.e. the customer, it's easy to see why they're so successful and sell so many copies, and become a big cultural phenomenon. We need games developed by gamers, for gamers that don't waste our time, because that is what I believe makes gaming feel like a chore.
Immersion.
But that's
That's
just
what
one
they
man's
need.
take on the idea of gaming becoming a chore. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you all in the next one.
He's not entirely wrong. Like, I get it. I get a lot of the points that he makes. I do. It's just slightly different, I guess. I think it's always kind of been there with some titles. It's just how you connect with the content, and with there being such bigger worlds that aren't as like deep and immersive as the smaller worlds, it makes it a little bit more obvious. And I think that going back to smaller scale and first single player and 4-player co-op games on a smaller scale is what would really help the game industry reestablish that immersive environment that gamers are desperately looking for right now. But even then, immersion is subjective, and how much you connect with the game is subjective. So we'll have to see. They'd have to do what I'm talking about to see if it works. And hopefully they do. Like and subscribe. Do this stuff. You want all that? All of that. Hey there, it's Skeg Broggy. Thanks for watching the video. And if you enjoyed it, please let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button and follow me here on Twitch for more awesome content. Link is in the description.